The normative treatises lay down the various bases of or principles of tax collection. Why the ruler and how the ruler should collect taxes. The maxims are laid down in the Dharma Shastras. While if one looks at the inscriptions, particularly land grant charters from say 400 AD onwards, one comes across a very large number of revenue terms and also officials entrusted with the collection of those revenues. What does it tell us? Take for example the well-known Chinese pilgrim Fashian in 5th century AD, while traveling in greater parts of North India, Central India, suggested that the burden of taxation for Indian population was rather light and it was a very lenient taxation system. If one tries to compare the data from the Gupta period inscriptions and the Vakataka inscriptions from Central India, it shows a completely contrary picture. It shows that in fact the burden of taxation and the diversification of revenue demands was ever on the increase, including the terrible custom of imposing forced labor, which is called vishti and which figures very prominently in the inscriptions. So there are diverse types of images coming out of different sources. Similarly, R.S. Sharma, one of the most respected historians of ancient India, used a text on architecture, Aparajita Pricha, to suggest how the author of this Sanskrit text proposed to have different types of palaces for different grades of rulers. That is, for a sovereign ruler, the kind of palace is far bigger than the habitat or the dwelling house of a relatively smaller underlord or a subordinate vassal. Now, Sharma's idea was not to visualize how the royal palaces would have looked like in the light of this prescription. He used this particular text purely on architecture to indicate how even the texts on architecture was largely influenced by the idea of political hierarchy between the lord and his vassals, and therefore built up his concept of Indian feudalism, the concept of political fragmentation. There were many other sources used, particularly the evidence of land grants, the emergence of the samantas or the underlords to great prominence, in fact at the cost of the central political authority. But with that, he used in addition an architectural text to indicate how the element of political hierarchy influenced a text on architecture.